All right, we are back here on the podcast talking Olympic soccer today. Join me today, one of the big soccer mavens. We not had a chance to touch much soccer on this podcast lately. Martino Puccio is here. Martino, how are you?
Good, good. Finally get to celebrate something within my sports fandom. Doing well.
Yeah, absolutely doing well. I mean, you're a big Italy guy. They just won the Euro. It's been a good week for you.
Yeah, finally. Listen, to top it off with Chris Bryant soon, or any big addition to the Mets, and then it's a great week. Even seeing Messi win his first international trophy too was awesome for anyone who always supports that guy and how great of a player he actually is.
Yeah, it's pretty fun for sure. I have to say, like, in terms of the soccer on this podcast, I don't think we've talked soccer on here. I think since your first appearance here, we talked about the 2018 World Cup. It's been that long.
Yeah, I know. I was actually thinking about that, or maybe we were talking about it. And I was like, yeah, wow, that was like 2018 at Iona, and like you forget how fast it goes by because it's already over 3 years now. And Yeah, I mean that's how quickly things can turn around because Italy didn't even make it to the World Cup.
No, they did not make it the World Cup. And right now, we are here talking about the Olympics. And obviously, before we dive into it, do you want to have anything you want to add about the Euros or Copa before we move on?
Um, no, I mean there wasn't much else. It was I was really just backing Italy for a couple years now to win the tournament. So that was like great to see that came to fruition. Beating England at their own home turf was also amazing to get to see. Penalties are never fun. It genuinely is not. When you have to go through all of that, it's just the most intense thing possible. But the best team won the tournament, and it's great to see a 53-year drought end. Get to watch it with families like always a great thing because that's like one thing that you don't choose fandom wise. If it's your background, it's what your family is. It's what everyone roots for. It's not a club thing. It's not a franchise or Mets and Yankees or Jets and Giants like a lot of my family is like. So to be on the same side and then see something like that again since the first time I was, 11 years old, 15 years ago. So I mean, again, it's just awesome to see.
Yeah, it is. And we're going to shift gears to the Olympics here, which I think I'm going to make the analogy to see if you agree with it. I feel like Olympics to soccer is sort of like what baseball treats Olympics like, where the best players don't all go. It's a lot of amateurs, either guys who are not playing professionally or like who are on the way up. So it's not the biggest deal compared to the World Cup, whereas baseball treats WBC more important. Would you agree with that analogy?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's just it's never really a thing, especially like baseball. It's right in smack middle of the season. Like it's way too important. With soccer, it's like recovery time, or they're getting started for a new season, or depending on what hemisphere these countries are coming from, they're in the middle of their season. So it's like difficult. You get like three players that are over the U23 mark, which is what the tournament is for the Olympics. So, I mean, it's cool to sometimes see like star players get brought up to that, but you take it with a grain of salt. And the superpowers never really go there because a lot of the top young players for these countries go and play for the real international tournaments that are major. Like, Argentina's in this, Spain's in this. Like a lot of their players were there for Copa America and the Euros. They're not really going to send those guys over to that. Maybe some if they didn't get a chance to play that much and they were just called up. But you're right for the most part. Like we're seeing Todd Frazier play for USA. So I mean, what else do you need to know?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest example I could think of in terms of like a star going to the Olympics was back in 16 when Brazil sent Neymar to try and win the gold medal at home, which makes sense because that was the one big international tournament they never won. So, like, this time I don't think you're having any of that caliber going, if I'm correct.
No, not. I mean, Neymar is just like totally different. He's basically an icon at this point. I mean, there's some real star players going to this, but not at that level. Not at that level.
Yeah, for sure. And right now, this is four groups of four teams. So you have 16 teams in the field. There are some big names country wise, like you mentioned. France is there, Spain, Brazil, defending champs, Germany, but like not a lot of big name players. So as you can see, like in terms of seeing some of the young talent coming up there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like some of these countries never really qualify for the World Cup, and if they do, they don't make much noise at all. I mean, like South Africa, you never see them there. I mean, Japan does a pretty good job of producing talent. Mexico's always the one country in this competition that always seems to be making noise. You get your South American countries as well, just because of the way the season lines up is totally different over there. You know, I would say for Ivory Coast, I might be biased. Frank Kessie is a star for AC Milan. He's over the U23 age, but he's one of the best defensive midfielders in Europe, and he had his best season of his career. So I think that. And Mexico too. I mean, there's just a lot of young talent that's coming up with there. You saw some of them in the Nations League last month, and they're just trying to just win like the gold medals like that. Some of these countries know if they're not able to win the major tournaments, they're able to at least add a gold medal to their resumes, which is huge for them. So like a gold medal is just like fantastic. Messi won it with Argentina years back, so it still carries weight. It's still a gold medal. It's just no one cares about it as much, just because of the U23 aspect, and all the best players aren't going there. Like Honduras eliminated USA, but USA, we didn't have like all our top young talents. All of our top young talents that are U23 were with the top team that was going to Nations League, and they won Nations League. And I said it, I was like, listen, as nice as it is to win the Olympics, I rather our guys that are gonna be there for the World Cup and the Gold Cup, which is happening right now. I'd rather those guys win something against the best competition. For me, it's nice, you want to win everything, but it like that just kind of shows where my viewpoint of it all is, and that's maybe it's a few people don't agree with me on that, but again, at the end of the day, I can't take it too seriously, because it's like if we didn't win with our best, then what am I truly upset about? Because if we had our best, then maybe it's a different story. So
Yeah, I just want to clarify also for the listeners that this applies specifically to the men's side of the Olympics. The women's
mhm.
Olympics teams send all their best players to it, so that's the more compelling. Like if you're watching for stars, that's where you want to watch, not really the men's side.
But even then, the women's team is so dominant. It's kind of like, all right, can we get some like fresh blood in here? Because we got Megan Rampino in here for the 20th year in a row, it feels like. And it's kind of like, let's get some of the more young, talented women in there, because they do a great job with their women's league. And it's like growing in Europe as well. They have their own version of the Champions League. So, I mean, that's always exciting for me. And I always enjoy the Women's World Cup as well. It's good. It's a good aesthetic to watch. It's legitimately great, and so yeah, and obviously for the men's, that's different rules. So
Yeah, and in terms of the men's, Brazil won the gold, obviously, in Rio in 2016. They're back here. You think they can repeat? Do you think they have enough talent on the U23 squad to win this?
it's kind of tough to say, because it's such a weird spot for so many of these guys, because of the season, and how condensed it's been. You don't have a lot of guys that are top players. Carlson is the guy for Everton. Matthias Cunha as well. Those two guys are their forwards. Those guys are very highly sought after within Europe itself. They play at pretty big clubs. I mean, Everton isn't that big, but it's just a massive club like that. Martinelli as well. I mean, he's more of like a midfielder hybrid type, as well as a forward from Arsenal. There, in reality, it's just a lot of experience up front, and with young defenders, that's always probably the weak point for a lot of countries, because defenders, just like in basketball, for example, they're not great from the get-go. The older they get, the better they are as defenders, because defending is more about intelligence in this sport. It's not so much about physicality and endurance. It's all about positioning, being tactical, and knowing where to be on the field the whole time. So if you're young and you're never facing a guy like the level of Richarlison and Matthias Cunha, who play in two of the top five leagues in the world, it's difficult to stop guys like that. So I mean, just for their attacking prowess alone, they're one of the favorites, and I think there's a great chance. But they have a difficult group. It's not an easy group. They probably have the toughest group.
Yeah, absolutely. And the group that they're in right now, they are in Group D with Germany, Ivory Coast, mentioned before, and Saudi Arabia. So, I mean, if you think that's the toughest group of the four?
I think so personally because Germany always does a great job with their youth as well. And listen, I respect Ivory Coast and the talent that they have. I think they're one of the more underrated countries in the world in general. And again, I'm just going to be biased with Frank Kessie. Frank Kessie is the best midfielder that's going to this tournament. So when you have that on your team, it's just a totally different scenario when he's a guy that's locking up some of the best midfielders in the world and facing off against the likes of Ronaldo for years now. It's just that experience alone carries a lot of weight, and if that's one of the four teams in there, it just makes it difficult. But you got to feel bad for German fans in a sense because they get the group of death in the Euros and they get the group of death in the Olympics.
Yeah, I think one group that's also, I think, a little underrated, in my opinion, is Group A, Japan's group, because Japan, is going to gun for this because they want to win in front of their home country.
Mm-hmm.
And I know South Africa's not great, but Mexico tries very hard in the Olympics every year. They try and get medals, and France still has the pipeline of players from the same as the country that won the World Cup in 2018. So that's not easy either.
No, none of it's easier. And the funny part about France is that their backup team is just as good as like some major tournament teams, and it's pretty damn insane for that. And in German youth, there's just so much depth in general. And I know we're talking about that group, but Japan as well. Japan really does produce when they produce great players, they're really actually good. And it's respectable and it's hard to because there's not a lot of people and players that come out of Asia like that. So it's rare when it happens. Korea produces certain players like that as well. And a lot of these countries play for pride, because it's not just the Olympic aspect of it. It's also like it's one of the few times that your country and you'll be representing them on the biggest stage possible, because there are more viewers than AFCON gets, right? For example, with South America, it's the Olympics. It's still the biggest sporting event every 4 years that isn't called the World Cup. So again, regardless if it's U23 or anything, these players are going to give their best no matter what. And that's what makes it difficult alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at these teams here, like who are maybe like three that Martino Puccio is going to say, like, I'm going to try and make a point, check out some of their matches in this event?
Um, I would say Honduras is one of them, just to compare and contrast to where the USA youth was and see how they really could have done within this tournament itself. Um, I would go again with Brazil. I'm very curious to see how those forwards work there, and then more of Spain because Spain was one of the more impressive teams within Euro 2020. I want to see if there's a young striker within that side that kind of can make a stamp on this Olympics, and then not only that, try and make a name for himself within the next 12 to 14 months to try and get to cater for the World Cup. And if that player is able to do that, then that changes everything for that tournament because I think Spain becomes one of the favorites.
Yeah, it does. And I think also for me, I think, like you said, I'm intrigued by France. As you mentioned, you said their backup squad is almost as good as a lot of teams, like top teams. So I'm just going to see like how they approach the Olympics here and see how they can get out of that group.
Yeah, I mean, it just really is like kind of fascinating to see how these countries approach this stuff. It's really just kind of it's not an audition for the national team, but people remember it if that makes sense. Like they'll remember that kind of performance you put in there. If there's like a decision for a final roster spot to get a call up for a team during an international break, and they're kind of like, okay, we're kind of making a decision between player A and player B. What do we know from player A and player B? Like, oh, player B is like having a great season, but it's like, yeah, but player A played better on the international spot and was like the key guy or one of the key guys in the Olympics. That is a very big stage. So I think it's just all stuff like that. And, there are some really good players that do play in this tournament. It's not always the big names that we see currently. It's also, players that will be future stars. And like we saw Messi dominate in that stuff too. So.
Yeah, and as you mentioned the future stars, and obviously the Olympics is here, delayed a year because of COVID. Next year is the actual World Cup towards the end of the year in Qatar because of the weather situation. There's not, I think it's being played November, December as opposed to its usual summer perch. So like any stars you
Yeah.
could see playing here, you think end up being on World Cup rosters next year?
I mean, just the guys that I mentioned, Carlson, Cunha, for Brazil as well, can definitely make a run within that. With Mexico, it just all depends on with like some of these teams like qualifying though, because qualifying has started for some of these regions, but it hasn't started for others. So it's really hard to say. Like you expect Spain, Argentina, Brazil, Germany to all be there, France, most likely Japan, even Mexico to an extent too. Really, it's just a dominated by the USA and Mexico. I'm not. I have to double check again with the Mexico team with this to see if Diego Leganés is in there, and he was someone who absolutely dominated USA in that Nations League match. Let's see if he got called up. Yeah, Diego Leganés. He plays for Real Betis in Spain. He's going to be there. That guy right now, I'm telling you, is the most talented out of all the Mexican players, and he I think is one of those players that could make a lot of noise come next year heading into the World Cup. So yeah, if it was anyone, he's definitely the one that caught my eye out of all those guys.
Yeah, it's easy to see what happens with them for sure. I do think it's going to be interesting for me. I'm going to keep an eye on this tournament because I do think there's a lot of potential medal picks here. Like if you had to pick today, like who were your top contenders for the medals?
It's difficult because you never see a lot of these. For me, I think Brazil is the favorite in my opinion. I just think there's just no excuse for the players that they have up front that they shouldn't win it and dominate almost every team that's here because there's no high profile defenders. There's not a lot of high profile midfielders that are going to be participating in this competition. For me, it's just I think Brazil. And the rest, I'll be honest with you, is a total crapshoot. You never know what could happen, but I think Brazil is a favorite for the gold, in my opinion.
Yeah, I will also say, considering the format of this tournament and the fact that Group B is so much lighter than the rest of these guys, like, would you be shocked if one of them like managed to sneak through, like, based on the draw and get themselves into like the medal rounds?
Oh, it can always happen, especially in knockout soccer. Like you put yourself in a situation where it's just a one goal difference, and all you need is that one opportunity. It's not like basketball where you're exchanging baskets on a consistent basis. It's not like the NFL where there's like four quarters and multiple opportunities to score like that almost all the time in various ways. With soccer, it's like sometimes you could dominate, you could get a ton of shots on goal, you could be missing, you could be hitting them weakly towards the keeper if you have great opportunities, and the other team can simply just take advantage of the one shot that they have and you win 1-0. So I never be shocked by stuff like that.
Yeah, because I'm just saying, for argument's sake here, let's say like South Korea wins Group B, and then they end up drawing Japan the second round. Like you're putting one of those guys into the medal round at least if that happens.
And that itself is going to be dramatic simply because of the location rivalry. It's just gonna be that. It's just you're gonna have that happen, and then you never know because in matches like that, all bets are off. Like we know that. Like any in a one game setting, anything can happen, and any team can beat anyone in the sport. So don't be shocked if that happens. Yeah, you're right with that format.
Yeah, because I'm looking, because like that group just stands out as a sore thumb for me. It's like, hey, like it's not as strong as the other groups, but I think they could be a lot of fun coming out of there because somebody could go on like a Cinderella run out of there.
Yeah, you legitimately never know. You legitimately never know. You're 100% right. And then that's really all there is to it. There's not much more analysis kind of, needed for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Because again, so many times like people just think it's a shoe in like the group of death teams in the Euro, all of them got eliminated in the first round.
yeah.
And they were all favorites ahead of Italy prior to entering the tournament. So that like in itself lets you know what could actually go down.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to be interested in this because obviously I haven't paid much attention to international soccer because they haven't had a World Cup in a few years. The Euros were nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to get back in that flow a little bit. And now you got this, and then, there's a little break before you get the World Cup next year because I think that's going to be a little odd getting used to the fact that's going to be played basically during the holidays in America.
Yeah, it's going to be odd. We have our football over here. They're going to have a stoppage for the European leagues as well. And there's a lot of controversy surrounding that one and all the people who passed away trying to build all these stadiums and stuff like that. It's a whole load of issues. And pretty much almost every time we have an international friendly now, it's going to be World Cup qualifiers because it has to be a quick turnaround. You get African Cup of Nations is going to be in January. They have that as well. So that's even factored into when you go to the World Cup because not only these guys playing in the middle of their season, some of them are going to the Olympics as well. As you can see, they also got to play in AFCON, and then if they qualify for the World Cup, they got to play for the World Cup. Like it's just not a lot of breaks, and that's unfortunately what happened with COVID and all that stuff. So again, it would have been just all spread out. So that's why it's all going to be very fascinating, and anyone can really make a run.
It also feels weird that, like, in a way, the World Cup kind of benefits a little bit from the stoppage from COVID because, like, if this is on a typical calendar here, where was he coming up in like a June? You would have like to cram so many qualifiers into such a short period of time. It'd be ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean there's certain regions that have started their World Cup qualifiers, like we mentioned. But you're right. I mean, like they're just gonna have these issues, and that's what they wanted, though. You know what I mean. They're not gonna push back that World Cup. They're gonna just keep on having that at the same time, and teams are gonna have to figure that out. And I think it's personally gonna be a domino effect because you never know how players react towards their injuries. What's the recovery time like? Like we're seeing it in Major League Baseball right now. We did have a 60-game season. We come back and look at all the injuries happening. Forget just the Mets itself, right? The Mariners have a ton of injuries as well. We see guys going down pitchers wise. It's load management. You could play as much as you want in this sport, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of running, and you have to worry about lower leg injuries. And if you don't take care of that properly, you can have some massive career changing injuries. There's a lot that's involved in that. So
Yeah, your national soccer season will be definitely a lot of fun to watch the next couple of weeks. Martina, thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, if you follow social media, keep up some of the stuff you're up to.
yeah, you just follow me on social media at Martino Puccio. Just doing state of play podcasts and writing for the Athletic. Maybe I'll do something for the Gold Cup final, or maybe write some stuff for the Olympics as well. Have to present some stuff to my bosses to see if they're interested in any of that. And yeah, just on Twitter at Martino Puccio. It's full Mets season for me right now, so I'm fully invested in that. I mean, I've always been, obviously, that. So it's I'm excited now for the stretch. Can't. It's funny because I realized we blew a 5-0 lead on Sunday to the Pirates, and I was just so happy about Italy. I didn't even notice or care about it. And now it's kind of sunk in with me like that's a terrible loss to have because we know how important every single game is.
Yes, it is. They are still in first place as of recording.
Yes, yes, thank God.
All right, Martina, thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it.
No problem.